Sarah clutched the eviction notice, her knuckles white against the crumpled paper. The words blurred, but the message was stark. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until she and Peter would be homeless. Her small apartment, with its peeling paint and perpetually leaky faucet, was a haven, however humble. Losing it felt like losing a part of herself, a final thread snapping in the tattered fabric of her life. Peter, her 9-year-old son, was at school, oblivious to the impending disaster. Sarah often wondered how she managed to keep up the facade of normalcy, plastering a smile on her face when her heart felt like a lead weight in her chest. Every day was a scramble, a delicate dance between paying for groceries, keeping the lights on, and hoping no new, unexpected bill would arrive to shatter their fragile peace. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices in the early mornings and waiting tables at a diner until late at night. But it was never enough. The city, a sprawling beast of concrete and glass, seemed to swallow her efforts whole. She sank onto the worn sofa, the springs groaning in protest, and buried her face in her hands. The silence of the apartment was punctuated only by the distant wail of a siren, a mournful sound that echoed the despair in her soul. How would she tell Peter? How could she explain that the only home he'd ever known was about to be snatched away? The thought was a physical pain, a sharp, twisting knot in her stomach. "Mom, can I have a new comic book?" Peter asked, his eyes wide and hopeful, a faint smudge of dirt on his cheek from an afternoon of playing soccer with his friends. Sarah's heart ached. He deserved so much more than the scratch she could offer. His current comic book, a worn-out issue of Captain Comet, was practically falling apart from being read so many times. She managed a weak smile. "Maybe next week, sweetie. We're a little tight right now." Peter, surprisingly, didn't argue. He was a perceptive child, acutely aware of the hushed conversations and the worried lines that often creased his mother's forehead. He knew tight meant money was scarce, and he rarely pushed. Instead, he simply nodded, his gaze dropping to his scuffed sneakers. Sarah felt a fresh wave of guilt. He was such a good boy, so understanding. He never complained about their simple meals or the hand-me-down clothes he wore. He found joy in the small things, a particularly sunny day, a new drawing with his crayon set, or a perfectly aimed shot into a makeshift goal. It was these moments of pure, unadulterated childhood joy that kept Sarah going, a flickering candle in the encroaching darkness. She ruffled his hair, a silent apology for all the things she couldn't give him. "How about we make some popcorn tonight and watch that old movie you like?" she offered, trying to inject some cheer into her voice. Peter's face lit up instantly. "Really? The one with the talking dog?" he exclaimed, all thoughts of comic books momentarily forgotten. Sarah smiled, a genuine one this time. For a moment, the eviction notice was forgotten, replaced by the simple, enduring love for her son. The next morning, the stark reality of their situation returned with a vengeance. Sarah opened the refrigerator to find it almost bare. A half-eaten carton of eggs, a lonely carton of milk, and a single wilted apple stared back at her. Breakfast was sparse, and she knew lunch would be even more so. "Peter, I need you to do something for me," she said, trying to sound casual. "Can you run down to the corner store and pick up a loaf of bread and some more milk? Here's $10. She handed him the crinkled bill, her fingers brushing against his small, warm hand. "And be sure to get the change, okay?" Peter, ever the responsible little man, puffed out his chest. "I will, Mom," he declared, already imagining himself a brave explorer on a perilous mission. Sarah watched him go, a familiar knot of worry tightening in her stomach. The neighborhood wasn't the best, but the corner store was just a block away, and Mr. Henderson, the kindly owner, always looked out for Peter. Still, a mother's worry was a constant companion. She sighed, her gaze falling on the eviction notice still lying on the coffee table. The clock was ticking, and she had no idea how to stop it. She picked up the phone, dialing the number of a temp agency she'd seen advertised, her voice filled with a desperate, practiced optimism she didn't feel. Every call was a potential lifeline, every rejection a crushing blow. Peter, clutching the $10 bill like a precious treasure, skipped down the sidewalk. The sun was shining, a rare and welcome visitor after a week of gray skies. He loved these small errands, feeling a sense of importance and independence. The corner store, with its familiar bell jingling above the door, was a comforting sight. He waved to Mr. Henderson, who was restocking shelves, and headed straight for the dairy section. As he waited in line at the counter, he noticed a man in front of him. The man was dressed in expensive-looking running clothes, the kind Peter had only ever seen in magazines. But his face was drawn, a furrow of concern etched between his brows. He placed a single bottle of water on the counter. "That'll be $2, Mr. Henderson said, his voice cheerful. The man fumbled in the pockets of his shorts, his expression growing increasingly bewildered. "I seem to have left my wallet at home," he mumbled, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I just went out for a quick run and ended up further than I thought." Mr. Henderson, usually good-natured, simply shrugged. "Can't help you then, sir. Store policy." The man sighed, a look of genuine disappointment on his face. He looked tired and thirsty. Peter, watching the exchange, felt a pang of sympathy. He thought about his own $2, the change his mom usually let him keep for helping out. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the man's water. A small, innocent decision was about to set a monumental chain of events in motion. Peter didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled $2 bill. "Here," he said, holding it out to Mr. Henderson. "I'll pay for his water." Both Mr. Henderson and the man looked at Peter, surprised. The man's eyes, a startling shade of blue, widened slightly. "You don't have to do that, son," the man said, a hint of protest in his voice, though a flicker of gratitude was also visible. Peter just shook his head, his small face earnest. "It's okay. Everyone gets thirsty." Mr. Henderson, usually stoic, cracked a small smile as he took Peter's $2. "Well, isn't that something?" he chuckled, handing the bottle of water to the man. The man took the water, his gaze lingering on Peter. "Thank you," he said, his voice softer now. "That was incredibly kind of you." He took a long, grateful swig of water, his eyes still on Peter. "What's your name, young man?" "Peter," he replied, a little shyly. "Peter. I won't forget this, Peter," the man promised, a sincere warmth in his tone. He finished the water, crumpled the bottle, and tossed it into a nearby bin. With a final appreciative nod to Peter, he turned and walked out of the store, disappearing down the street. Peter watched him go, a small feeling of warmth spreading through his chest. He hadn't expected anything in return. He just wanted to help. He then paid for the bread and milk, carefully collecting his change, a small but significant act of generosity unknowingly woven into his day. The man, whose name was Alexander Sterling, continued his run, but his mind was no longer on his usual route or his workout. It was on the small boy named Peter. Alexander was the CEO of Sterling Innovations, a multi-billion-dollar tech company. He was used to navigating complex business deals, commanding respect in boardrooms, and living a life of immense privilege. He had left his sprawling mansion that morning for a spontaneous, longer-than-usual run, exploring a new part of the city he hadn't seen before. He had deliberately left his phone and wallet at home, enjoying the rare freedom of being truly disconnected. He hadn't realized how far he had wandered, nor how drastically the neighborhoods had changed from the manicured lawns of his usual stomping grounds. The simple act of being unable to pay for a $2 bottle of water had been a jarring, almost humbling experience. It was a stark reminder of a vulnerability he rarely encountered. But it was Peter's unassuming kindness, his genuine desire to help a stranger, that truly resonated with him. The boy's selfless act stood in sharp contrast to the often ruthless, self-serving world Alexander inhabited. He found himself replaying the scene in his mind, the boy's earnest face, the simple words, "Everyone gets thirsty." It was a lesson in humanity, delivered unexpectedly by a child. The next morning, Alexander couldn't shake Peter from his thoughts. He usually dove straight into work, but today his focus was elsewhere. He sat in his opulent office, overlooking the city skyline, a stark contrast to the small corner store he had visited yesterday. Sarah, he called to his assistant, a sharp, efficient woman who could locate anything or anyone. "I need you to find someone for me." Sarah, an ever-professional, stood poised with her notepad. "Certainly, Mr. Sterling. Who are we looking for?" Alexander leaned forward, a rare, determined glint in his eyes. "A young boy named Peter. He helped me out yesterday at a small corner store on Elm Street. He would be around 9 years old. I need to find him and his family." Sarah raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in her usually impassive expression. It wasn't every day her boss asked her to track down a child from a modest neighborhood. "Elm Street, you said. Any other details?" she asked, already typing furiously on her tablet. "He was with an older gentleman, the store owner, I believe, and he paid for my water. He had around $8 and change, I think." Sarah nodded, a plan already forming in her mind. "Consider it done, Mr. Sterling. I'll start immediately." Alexander felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't about business or profit or power. It was about gratitude and a desire to repay a kindness that had touched him deeply. Sarah was in the middle of preparing a meager lunch of instant noodles for Peter when there was a knock on the door. Her heart leaped into her throat. Eviction notices often came with follow-up visits, and she braced herself for another confrontation. She slowly approached the door, peering through the peephole. Instead of the stern face of a landlord, she saw a well-dressed woman, impeccably coiffed, holding a small, discreet tablet. Sarah hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. The woman offered a polite, professional smile. "Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Jenkins, and I'm an assistant to Mr. Alexander Sterling. I believe your son Peter performed a rather kind act for Mr. Sterling yesterday." Sarah's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "Peter? An act of kindness? What was this about?" She slowly opened the door, a mix of apprehension and curiosity warring within her. The woman, Sarah Jenkins, exuded an air of calm authority. "Mr. Sterling would very much like to express his gratitude to Peter and to you. May we come in for a moment?" she asked, gesturing slightly to a sleek black car parked at the curb, from which a man emerged, tall and distinguished, unmistakably the man Peter had described from the store. Sarah, still bewildered, but sensing no threat, reluctantly stepped aside, allowing them into her small, humble apartment. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, the stark contrast between their worlds palpable in the tiny living room. Alexander Sterling, a figure usually found in the pages of business magazines, now stood in Sarah's cramped living room. He looked around, his gaze taking in the worn furniture, the faded wallpaper, the clear signs of a life lived on the fringes. He felt a pang of something akin to shame, remembering his earlier irritation at being without his wallet. How trivial his problems had been compared to the struggles evident in this apartment. He smiled warmly at Peter, who was hiding a little behind his mother's leg, eyes wide with curiosity. "Hello, Peter," Alexander said, his voice gentle. "Thank you again for your help yesterday. You truly helped me out of a bind." Peter mumbled a shy, "You're welcome." Alexander then turned to Sarah. Sarah Miller," she supplied, still trying to make sense of the situation. "Mrs. Miller," Alexander continued, "your son showed incredible generosity. It's a quality I admire greatly. I believe in repaying kindness, and I would like to offer you a proposition." Sarah braced herself, half expecting a lecture or a request for something she couldn't give. Instead, Alexander's next words left her speechless. "I'm looking for a personal assistant, someone reliable and trustworthy to help manage my household affairs and personal appointments. The position comes with a very generous salary, benefits, and accommodation. I would also like to offer Peter a full scholarship to the prestigious Northwood Academy, one of the best schools in the country. And," he added, seeing the disbelief warring with hope in her eyes, "I would like you both to come and live in my mansion. There's plenty of space, and I assure you, you would have your own private wing." Sarah's mind reeled. It felt like a dream, a fantastical story conjured from the depths of her despair. A job? A scholarship for Peter? A mansion? It was too much to process, too good to be true. Her first instinct was suspicion. Was this some kind of trick? A cruel joke? But Alexander Sterling's gaze was sincere, his expression calm and unwavering. Peter, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, looked up at his mother, a silent question in his eyes. Sarah thought of the eviction notice, the endless struggle, the fear that had been her constant companion. What did she have to lose? Her current path was leading to homelessness. This, however improbable, was an opportunity, a lifeline thrown from the most unexpected quarter. "Mr. Sterling," she began, her voice barely a whisper, I don't know what to say. This is overwhelming." Alexander nodded understandingly. "Take your time. Talk it over with Peter. But I assure you my offer is genuine. I believe in giving back, and Peter's simple act of kindness truly touched me. I see potential, and I believe you both deserve a chance for a better life." He handed her a business card, sleek and embossed with the Sterling Innovations logo. "My assistant will be in touch tomorrow morning to see if you've made a decision. No pressure, of course." With another polite nod, Alexander and his assistant left, leaving Sarah and Peter in a stunned silence, the air in the small apartment suddenly charged with a dizzying mix of disbelief, hope, and almost an unbearable sense of possibility. The next morning, after a long, tearful, and hopeful discussion, Sarah called Sarah Jenkins to accept the offer. 2 days later, a sleek black car pulled up to their curb. Sarah and Peter, their meager belongings packed into 2 suitcases, stepped out of their old apartment for the last time. As they drove through increasingly affluent neighborhoods, Peter's face was pressed against the window, his eyes wide with wonder. He'd never seen houses like these, with their sprawling gardens and imposing gates. Finally, they pulled up to a magnificent iron gate, which swung open silently to reveal a long, winding driveway lined with ancient oak trees. At the end stood a mansion, a grand edifice of stone and glass, far beyond anything Sarah had ever imagined. It was less a house and more like a palace. Inside, the opulence was breathtaking: high ceilings, polished marble floors, exquisite artwork adorning the walls. Yet, despite its grandeur, there was a surprising warmth to the place. Alexander Sterling greeted them with a genuine smile. "Welcome home," he said simply. He introduced them to Mrs. Gable, the kind-faced housekeeper, who led them to their new living quarters, a spacious, beautifully furnished suite with 2 bedrooms, a private living area, and a luxurious bathroom. Peter gasped when he saw his room, complete with a desk, a bookcase overflowing with books, and a window overlooking a magnificent rose garden. For the first time in a very long time, Sarah felt a lightness in her chest, a profound sense of relief washing over her. This was more than a new home or a new job. It was a fresh start, a second chance at happiness for both of them. Life at the mansion was a whirlwind of new experiences. Sarah quickly adapted to her role as Alexander's personal assistant, proving to be incredibly organized and efficient. She handled his schedule, coordinated events, and managed various household affairs with grace and competence. Alexander was impressed, not just by her skills, but by her quiet dignity and her genuine warmth. He often found himself relying on her insights, valuing her grounded perspective. Peter, meanwhile, thrived at Northwood Academy. The initial shyness quickly wore off as he discovered a love of learning he hadn't known he possessed. The small class sizes, dedicated teachers, and endless resources opened up a world of possibilities. He excelled in his studies, particularly in science and art, and made friends quickly. He even joined the school's soccer team, something he could have only dreamed of before. One evening, Sarah watched Peter from the doorway of his new room. He was engrossed in a thick science book, his brow furrowed in concentration. The lamp cast a soft glow on his face, highlighting the newfound confidence in his posture. Tears welled in her eyes, but these were tears of joy, of profound gratitude. This was the life she had always wanted for him, a life free from worry and filled with opportunity. This was more than a new home or a new job. It was a fresh start, a second chance at happiness for both of them. As weeks turned into months, a comfortable routine settled into their lives. Sarah found herself laughing more, her shoulders finally unburdening themselves of the heavy weight they had carried for so long. She and Alexander developed a strong professional relationship, but also a genuine friendship. They often shared meals, discussing everything from business strategies to Peter's latest achievements. Alexander, a man who had often felt isolated by his wealth and position, found genuine companionship in Sarah and Peter. He enjoyed Peter's youthful energy, his inquisitive mind, and his unshakable optimism. He often found himself looking forward to coming home, to the lively dinner conversations and Peter's enthusiastic stories about school. He had always been successful in business, but his personal life had often felt empty. Now, the mansion, once a grand but lonely space, felt alive, filled with warmth and laughter. Peter, in turn, began to see Alexander not just as his mom's boss, but as a kind, guiding figure, almost like an uncle. Alexander would often help him with his homework, patiently explaining complex concepts, or take him to soccer games, cheering him on from the sidelines. The small act of paying for a bottle of water had blossomed into something far more profound than any of them could have imagined. A new, unconventional family, bound not by blood, but by kindness, gratitude, and a shared sense of belonging. 1 year after their arrival at the mansion, Sarah and Peter hosted a small, intimate celebration. It was Peter's 10th birthday, and Alexander had insisted on a party. The grand dining room, usually reserved for formal dinners, was decorated with colorful balloons and streamers. Peter, beaming, unwrapped gifts from Sarah, Alexander, and even Mrs. Gable. He received a brand new telescope, a gift from Alexander, which sparked his already keen interest in astronomy. Later that evening, as they sat together on the spacious patio overlooking the sparkling city lights, Sarah took Alexander's hand. "I don't know how I can ever thank you enough. You've changed our lives in ways I never thought possible." Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "You don't need to thank me, Sarah. Your son taught me a valuable lesson, and you've brought so much joy and warmth into this home. I'm the one who's grateful." Peter, listening to their conversation, smiled. He remembered the day at the corner store, the thirsty man, and the $2 that felt like so much at the time. He never could have imagined that such a small act would lead to this. He looked up at the vast, star-studded sky, thinking about the universe, about how one small, seemingly insignificant action could create ripples that changed everything. He felt truly happy, a feeling that resonated deep within his young, hopeful heart. As the years passed, the bond between Sarah, Peter, and Alexander deepened. Sarah continued to be an invaluable asset to Alexander, not just professionally, but personally. She helped him launch a philanthropic foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged children and single-parent families, inspired by her own experiences and Peter's early act of kindness. Peter flourished at Northwood Academy, graduating with top honors and going on to a prestigious university, where he pursued a degree in astrophysics, still fascinated by the mysteries of the cosmos. He often credited Alexander with igniting his passion for learning, and his mother with instilling in him the values of compassion and generosity. The mansion remained their home, a place of shared memories, laughter, and unwavering support. Alexander, once a solitary figure, now had a family, a true connection that brought him more fulfillment than any business deal ever could. He watched Peter grow into a brilliant, compassionate young man and saw in him the reflection of his mother's strength and kindness. Sarah, no longer struggling, finally found peace and purpose. She often thought about the eviction notice, a distant, almost unbelievable memory, a stark reminder of how far they had come. Their story was a testament to the power of human connection, the ripple effect of a single, selfless act. Years later, Peter, now a renowned astrophysicist, stood on a stage accepting a prestigious award for his groundbreaking research. In his acceptance speech, he spoke not just of his scientific discoveries, but of the people who had shaped his life. "I stand here today," he began, his voice clear and resonant, "because of a $2 bottle of water, a simple act of kindness, and the incredible generosity of two remarkable individuals, my mother, Sarah, who taught me the importance of compassion, and Alexander Sterling, who showed me that true wealth lies not in what you possess, but in what you give." In the audience, Sarah and Alexander, now older but still vibrant, exchanged a proud glance. Their eyes met, a shared understanding passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary journey they had all embarked upon. The old fears were long gone, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude and joy. The mansion, once a solitary symbol of Alexander's success, was now a vibrant hub of activity, a testament to a family built on unexpected connections. Peter's story, the boy who paid for a stranger's water, became a legend whispered among their friends and colleagues, a powerful reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can change the course of a life, creating a legacy that echoes through generations. A truly happy ending, born from a moment of pure, selfless compassion. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire, teach, and entertain. Until next time, bye!